As you likely realize, if you clicked to watch this video, intrusive thoughts about your partner's past can be extremely painful. You're going about your day, you're feeling good, you're at work or whatever, and all of a sudden, bam, like a lightning bolt or something, you get an intrusive thought about your partner's past, and you have a painful response to that thought. In today's free video, I want to share with you one of the most important lessons that I've ever learned about how to deal with pain and eventually transcend pain. My name is Zachary Stockill, and since 2013, I've been helping thousands of men and women from across the world overcome retroactive jealousy and save their relationships. If you would like to work with me one-on-one, or you'd like more information about my work, please visit my website at retroactivejealousy.com. For the people here for the first time, the term retroactive jealousy refers to unwanted intrusive thoughts, and often obsessive curiosity, and sometimes what I call mental movies, about your partner's past relationships and or sexual or dating history. And obviously, when you can't stop thinking about your partner's past, there's a lot of pain that's often involved in that. But when I was a much younger man, I learned a very, very important lesson about pain, which is what I want to talk to you about today. So I'm going to tell you a brief story about this lesson and how I learned this important lesson about pain. So when I was around 20, maybe 21, I went to India for the first time, and I did a lot of things there. I volunteered for an NGO. I was going to school at an Indian university for a little bit. I traveled across the country. But one of the big things I did was I attended a 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat. Now, for those of you who've been to a Vipassana retreat, you realize that it's very full-on. It's a very intensive meditation retreat for 10 days. You're meditating for something like 13, 14 hours a day. You're waking up at 4 a.m., vegetarian meal, no televisions, no phones, no computers, no internet, no reading, nothing basically, but lectures and meditation for 10 days. You're living like a very devout monk essentially for 10 days. It's very intense. And anyway, I remember I was sitting in the meditation hall in the hills of northern India, absolutely beautiful location. But for the early days in that retreat, I was kind of miserable. I was thinking like, this is boring and what am I doing here? And this is a waste of time and I'm sacrificing my trip, for this to sit in this hall and be miserable and all of these things. I was kind of going down this mental spiral, a bit of self-pity, And at one point I was sitting, and when you're in this big meditation hall, you're sitting on the ground and you're sitting cross-legged usually, or at least I was. There's no chairs involved. So I was sitting on the ground and all of a sudden my leg started hurting, my left leg started really pulsing and hurting and I had a terrible cramp and all these things. And then as I experienced this pain, I started reacting even more mentally. I was beating myself up like, oh my God, I'm an idiot. What am I doing here? Now my leg hurts and this is nonsense and why did I do this? And yada, yada, yada. I was having an extremely averse reaction to the pain in my leg. And then all of a sudden, like a light bulb went off in my brain. And I realized that this is essentially the practice. Observing the pain, noting the pain, rather than responding to it. Rather than feeding that pain with more emotional energy, which is what I had been doing in the meditation hall up to that point. All the self-loathing and self-criticism and all these things and my misery and all the nonsense that I was telling myself about this experience was actually feeding that pain, because all that nonsense that I was telling myself was feeding that pain with emotional energy, and thus it was making the pain stronger. It was making the pain more intense. So I realized, this is part of the practice. So I was sitting there meditating and I decided to just observe and note the pain rather than respond to it. So what does that mean? I was sitting there and I was thinking, okay, now my leg is kind of humming. Now it's kind of vibrating. Feels a little bit warm now, a little bit cool. Interesting, the pain is fading, and on and on and on. Within about 5 minutes, my leg felt great. And you might think, well, what's the lesson there? The lesson I learned, and this very important lesson that I learned that I've been sharing for the better part of, almost 20 years now, something like that, long time, almost 20 years. The important lesson I learned is that reacting to pain is often worse than the pain itself. Aversion to pain fuels pain and makes pain more painful. So when something painful happens to us, rather than responding to that pain with more energy, we can simply notice, simply observe. Almost like it's a painting on the wall, just kind of noticing it, observing it, rather than having that response to it. Now, when you just notice pain, when you observe pain, it doesn't necessarily make the pain go away. In fact, most of the time it doesn't. But it often makes the pain much, much, much easier to deal with. when you're simply observing it rather than feeding that pain with more emotional energy. How does this relate to retroactive jealousy? How does this relate to experiencing painful, intrusive thoughts about your partner's past? Well, let's say I'm walking down the street and I have a painful thought about my girlfriend's past, about this guy that she used to be with. And I'll start thinking about it and I'll think, oh God, that was gross. And why did she do that? And I wish we could have met each other earlier. And maybe she's this and maybe she's that. And I can't believe she did that, yada, yada, right? I'm reacting to the pain. Whereas if in that moment, I simply take a deep breath and say, okay, oh wow, I'm having a painful thought about my partner's past. Okay, that thought's there. Hi, Mr. Thought. Okay, you're here. I'm not responding, I'm not reacting, I'm not feeding into the pain with more energy. I'm simply noticing it, almost like a painting on the wall. Interesting. Okay, that thought's there. Hello. Well, I'm going to continue on with my walk. I'm going to continue on with my day. I'm going to continue on focusing on the work that I have to do that day. I'm going to continue on enjoying this date that I'm on with my girlfriend, etc., etc. Maybe the thought is still there, and maybe it's still painful, but I'm not responding to it with more energy. I'm not beating myself up for having the thought. I'm not beating my girlfriend up mentally and judging her, and I'm not thinking about what a POS that guy was that she dated, etc., etc. I'm simply observing, I'm simply noting. Now, this is easier said than done. I can already hear the objections. Absolutely. Welcome to life. Most things that are worthwhile in life are easier said than done. So there's that. But number two, again, this won't cure the problem overnight, and you need more steps to cure this problem. But simply try that as a first step is my recommendation. Start getting in the habit, start getting in the practice of observing pain rather than responding to pain, rather than fueling the pain with more emotional energy. It's not going to make pain disappear, but I promise you it will make pain less painful, and you might be surprised how quickly you can move on from pain when you get in this habit. Guys and girls, I am trying to get to 20,000 subscribers on YouTube, so if you benefited from this video, if you like what I'm doing, if you want to support my work in a tiny, tiny, tiny way that doesn't cost you a dime, please click the subscribe button. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. While you're at it, click the like button, give me a thumbs up, all that good stuff. And you can also leave a comment telling me what you think about this video. Good, bad, ugly, I would appreciate hearing from you. Thanks again for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.